What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Modern Warfare 3. And in today's episode, we're going to be covering the brand new shotgun that was added with Season 4 Reloaded. This is the Reclaimer 18, also known as the Spas 12. And with this one, let's start it off with our rate of fire values, since we have two different rate of fire values. In pump action mode, which is the default mode, our rate of fire is 82 rounds per minute. Whereas if we swap over to the semi-auto mode, which you can do at any point, you don't need any special attachment or anything, this rate of fire is 179 rounds per minute. Now with that bonus rate of fire though, it doesn't come for free. There's a pretty big trade-off here, and this is you're going to be dealing a lot less damage in semi-auto mode compared to pump mode. And let's just have a look at our range and time to kill comparisons here in pump action versus semi-auto, and it is worth noting that by default, each shot that you fire will fire 7 pellets. But starting it off with pump action, we actually get a ridiculously impressive one-shot kill potential at 16.5 meters. That is pretty insane for a shotgun in this game. But the big thing I want to point out here is that has to be a perfect shot. You have to be fully aimed down sight with an attachment that tightens up your spread, like a choke for instance. And based on my testing, you can't miss a single pellet at that stage. So it's got insane potential, but it's quite unlikely you're going to be getting those kills on a super consistent basis, at least in my experience. And it turns out beyond that 16.5 meter range, it drops immediately off to a 3-shot kill. So beyond that, you don't even get a 2-shot kill. It drops right to a 3-shot kill. As for semi-auto, we have a pretty pathetic 2-shot kill potential at 6.3 meters, and it's not even really a guaranteed 2-shot kill at that point. You do have to be really consistent with hitting most, if not all, of your pellets. Whereas at about 4 meters, this is where it's a lot more consistent. You don't have to be quite as precise with your shots, and it's unlikely you'll get anything but a 2-shot kill at this stage. In saying that though, we can also see our time to kill potential with a 2-shot kill in semi-auto mode. This is 335 milliseconds, which especially for a shotgun in close quarter situations, that is a pretty terrible time to kill. It's not completely unusable, and you can definitely outplay enemies if you're integrating movement into the equation to dodge some of their shots. But in a straight up face-to-face gunfight against any SMG, you won't stand a chance with a 2-shot kill. And this is why, generally speaking, unless I'm really trying to challenge myself, I'm going to be sticking to pump action with the Reclaimer 18. Semi-auto just doesn't cut it in my opinion. Now, let's move on to the next comparison between pump action and semi-auto, because it doesn't just change our damages and ranges, it also changes all of our spread values. So let's first look at our Hipfire spread when standing still. This is with no attachments. And as we can see, in semi-auto, we actually get a tighter Hipfire spread. Then when it comes to tac stance, again with no attachments equipped, once again, we see semi-auto has a very noticeably tighter spread than pump action does. However, when we get aim down sight, this is where the tables turn and the pump action gets a very tight aim down sight spread. Whereas with semi-auto, it's not nearly as tight, and based on my testing, it actually appears your tac stance spread is slightly tighter than your aim down sight spread if you're in semi-auto mode. So this just reinforces the fact that when you're using pump action with this shotgun, you definitely want to get aim down sights. This is where the power comes in. It's actually pretty terrible if you aren't aiming down sights when in pump action mode. After that though, let's get into our handling stats, and keep in mind with the handling stats, these ones don't change at all if you're swapping between pump or semi-auto. These are consistent. When it comes to our aim down sight time, this is 300 milliseconds, which for a shotgun is actually not that bad, and this is a very important stat with this gun, especially in pump action mode. Then when it comes to our sprint to fire time, this is solid as well. Not the best in the game or anything, but very solid at 128 milliseconds. And then when it comes to our reload add time, we do have to reload each shell individually, and it's roughly 0.77 seconds per shell when it comes to a reload. Now, one thing you might have noticed though, is if you don't fire your gun all the way till empty and you hit the reload button, you'll reload each shell individually. However, when you fire right to empty, you're actually going to be reloading 2 shells at a time, which might seem really cool and it might seem beneficial. However, the total animation time for this is pretty much exactly the same. There's an initial animation that takes quite a bit of time to activate, and when you add everything all together, it's pretty much equalized here, so it isn't necessarily in your best interest to fire this all the way to empty, rather than just topping it off whenever you get an opportunity. And then finally, when it comes to the base stats, before we get into some attachments like barrels and ammo types, let's have a look at our movement speeds, which again, of course, these don't change if you swap between semi-auto and pump. Our base movement speed is bang on average for shotguns at 4.9 meters per second. Our sprint speed is pretty solid at 5.8 meters per second, which is nice, and our aim walking speed is not bad as well at 3 meters per second, and this is something you will want to take advantage of sometimes if you're using it in pump action mode. And with all that out of the way, let's get into our barrel attachments and how they impact the Reclaimer 18. And with this, the first thing I want to point out is if you're not using a barrel attachment, every shot that you fire will be 7 pellets. Whereas the moment you put any one of these 3 barrels on, it doesn't matter which one it is, it's actually going to give you 10 pellets per shot. Now, our overall damage dealt per shot is still the same based on my testing, and this won't improve your ranges or anything like that on its own, but it can definitely improve the consistency of your shots within those ranges. And as you can see here, we've got our pump action ranges with each of the barrels. And with the Iron Brand long barrel, it doesn't change our range values at all, but like I said, it can improve your consistency within those ranges due to the extra pellets. With the Discourager 900, this will give us a slight boost to all of our range values. And then the Chasm 40 heavy barrel will reduce all of our values a little bit. Then taking a look at the same thing in semi-auto mode, we see pretty much the same story. The Iron Brand doesn't change our range potential at all, but it will improve consistency. The Discourager 900 will improve our values slightly, and the Chasm 40 heavy will reduce our values slightly. Honestly, nothing too surprising here, but now let's get into our different ammo types. And once again, we're going to start this off with pump action. And with the Bolo shells, we have a one-shot kill potential of 5 meters, and in that 5 meters, it has to hit upper torso and arms, or neck or head, of course. And beyond that, there is no one-shot kill potential at all, even to the head, and our 2-shot kill potential only reaches out to about 20 meters, so Bolo shells are pretty terrible, definitely wouldn't recommend those at all. Then with the slug, we do get a better one-shot kill potential than the Bolo shells, but still way worse than the base version of the gun at 7.5 meters. And that will apply anywhere but the legs. If you shoot them in the legs, even at point blank range, it will be a 2-shot kill. Also, one benefit with the slug is we do get, as far as I can tell, an infinite one-shot headshot potential. So you might want to try the slug out if you're going for those crazy long shots to the head, but aside from that, you're probably going to be more consistent with just the standard ammo type. And then finally, we have the Dragon's Breath ammo, which very drastically reduces all of our ranges, aside from our consistent one-shot kill potential. That extra burn damage will give us slightly more consistency out to 3.5 meters instead of 2.5 meters. But honestly, in my opinion, that's not worth it at all because it cuts our one-shot kill potential all the way down to 7.5 meters. So in general, at least in pump action mode, I would say stay far away from the ammo types unless you want to do some crazy things with the slug headshots at longer ranges. As for semi-auto mode, we can't use slugs in semi-auto. The moment you put slugs on, it locks off the ability to swap over to semi-auto, so we can only use Bolo shells and Dragon's Breath. And just straight up, in both of these cases, you're far better off not using these. It just makes the gun worse in every way. And there we go. That's finally going to wrap it up for all of the important stats that I wanted to point out with the Reclaimer 18. Now, let's get into a few attachment combinations I've got for you guys that I've been finding success with so far. And the first one I want to share is my all-arounder, keeping in mind that I will only use this one in pump action. It's pretty terrible in semi-auto, so don't even bother swapping over to semi-auto. But with this, we're using the Bryson Choke, the Discourager 900 heavy barrel, that's the one that improves our range a bit. We've also got the Stovall Tack Laser, the Hinge LAF light stock, and then finally the Center Mass Grip Tape. And with this, our one-shot kill potential is 18.8 meters, which is very impressive for a shotgun, but you have to be very precise with that shot, and you absolutely have to get aim down sight. And when it comes to our aim down sight speed, this is improved nicely at 280 milliseconds. Our sprint out time is also improved a little bit at 113 milliseconds. And on top of this, our aim down sight strafe speed is pretty solid at 3.4 meters per second. So in many cases, you actually want to get aim down sight and strafe around corners with this, just because aiming down sight is so important. Now, when we do that, our aim down sight pellet spread is also very tight at 0.8 degrees. And our hipfire spread is also improved slightly, although I generally wouldn't recommend hipfiring unless you're in super close quarter situations, and even then, it's often going to take you 2 shots to kill. And there we go, that's the first one, pretty straightforward. Make sure you get aim down sight with this, and you'll actually be able to get some pretty crazy long shots, although unfortunately, not on a really consistent basis in my experience. Next, I wanted to share a fairly similar build, but it is a little bit different. We're going to be using this one in tack stance, again, primarily in pump action, although this one's a bit more viable in semi-auto than the previous one at least. And with this, again, we're using the Bryson Choke. This time we're using the Iron Brown long barrel, which is just to improve our consistency with those extra pellets without harming any of our mobility stats at all. We've got the Broom Bastion angled grip to help with our tack stance, the Hinge LAF light stock, and then finally the Haste 15 grip tape. Now with this one, we've got a slightly better aim down sight spread, and in tack stance, we don't even take that full aim down sight time to get our spread fully tightened. So that's one of the big benefits of using this in tack stance, is you can get that tightest possible spread a little bit earlier than you can with a full ADS build. And with this, you can still get some very impressive one-shot kills as long as you're nicely centered. Our sprint out time is also better than the previous build at 95 milliseconds, which is great. Aim down sight strafe speed is also very solid, and it's even faster when we're in tack stance compared to fully aiming down sight. And also, our hipfire values are tighter as well, so that makes it a little more viable in those close quarter situations to be hipfiring and still getting one-shot kills, at least in pump action. And I've got to say, with this one, I've actually been finding quite a bit of success, and in many ways, I prefer this over my previous build. But finally, I've got one last build I want to share for you guys, and this is my hipfire build that I tend to use in semi-auto mode, not pump action. And I'll be honest, right up front, this is far from my favorite build. I just wanted to make sure I was sharing something that was geared towards semi-auto, and I definitely consider this to be an extra challenge to be using this build. But in either case, with this, we're once again using the Bryson Choke. We've got the Iron Brand Long Barrel to help with that consistency with those extra pellets, the Broom Bastion Angle Grip, the Stovall Tack Laser, and the No Stock attachment. Now, it is worth noting, with the No Stock attachment, the moment you put that on, fully aiming down sight becomes terrible, because this is what your view is. You can't really see anything. But this is a hipfire build, and typically I'll also put this in tack stance just for those situations where maybe I do want to try to get aim down sight if I'm stretching my range out a little bit. At least then I'm going into a tack stance, and I can see what I'm shooting at. But with this, our sprint out time is excellent at 96 milliseconds. Our hipfire spread is also very, very tight, especially in semi-auto mode. It's extremely tight. Most of the pellets are going to be going in like the same hole. And this is just to ensure the fact that if you're within the 2-shot kill potential, you're almost always going to be getting that 2-shot kill, unless you're like sliding or you're just off target or something. And then on top of that, in tack stance, we get a ridiculously tight spread as well. So if you do need to stretch that range out for a 3-shot kill, you can do that in tack stance with this particular build. And with that, that is going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the Reclaimer 18 shotgun. As for my thoughts on this gun, I really like the fact that you can swap between semi-auto and pump action. I think that's a really interesting mechanic to be adding to the game, and I love the fact that you can do that on the fly. In saying that though, this gun is just so incredibly inconsistent, and that can get really frustrating. So many times I just feel like I'm playing the guessing game as to whether or not I'm going to get that 1-shot kill in pump action mode or 2-shot kill in semi-auto mode, even when it looks like I'm perfectly on target and should be getting that 1-shot or 2-shot kill. And that can get pretty frustrating, especially when you're in the super close quarter situations. I'm talking like less than 7 meters, for instance. If it were up to me, I'd like to see them improve the consistency within those specific ranges. So in pump action, I think it should be a much more consistent 1-shot kill if you're within about 5 to 7 meters and not 2.5 meters. Although I would say beyond that 10-meter range, yes, you should be aim down sight and you should have to hit every single pellet. I totally get that. That's totally fine. I'm just mainly frustrated in pump action with those very constant hit markers in super close quarter situations. Similarly, in semi-auto with that 2-shot kill potential, since our time to kill potential isn't that great at 335 milliseconds, I don't think it would be a problem at all to very noticeably extend that 2-shot kill potential, while also improving that consistent 2-shot kill potential range. If they were to do those things, I think the shotgun could be in a much better place, but as it is right now, I just find it a little too inconsistent and therefore frustrating to use. Now, of course, these are just my opinions, and I'd love to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about the Reclaimer 18 so far? Are you guys enjoying this, or not so much? Now, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description of the video, and if you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.